Hello again, this is Connor Hawkins from Waterlax Coatings. Again, part of the 4th generation here at Waterlax Coatings here in Cleveland, Ohio. This video, the topic is going to be about stain, some things to think about, some alternatives, some options you have for applying stain. I'm going to focus mostly on using the stains produced by Waterlax that go into the TrueTone line. We're going to talk about a few different things, prepping your surface, applying our TrueTone stains, and then I'll also include a little bit of information on using other stains as well. One of the first things, obviously with any project, and the most important step is always preparation. So it's going to be getting a good clean surface, sanding well, sanding to the proper grit. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and then getting your wood ready to accept the stain. Waterlax TrueTone products are buff-in products. If you watched our Universal Tungwell Sealer video, that's going to be applied the same way. We'll talk a little bit more about colors. I've laid out a little bit of a grid here on our white oak IKEA countertop. We'll look at a few different things and how it affects the way the wood accepts the color. One of the first things we're going to do is a process called water popping. What water popping does is it reopens the wood grain that we crushed and smushed and basically compressed during the sanding process. Whether it's the shipping process, the sanding process, or whatever it is, those wood grains are crushed. What water popping does is it swells those wood fibers again and allows it to accept more stain. So it's a pretty simple process. All you need is a clean rag and a little bit of water. I got some in this spray bottle here, and I'm just going to do it on this side of this pattern, and we'll pull the tape up and we'll stain everything. You'll see it's kind of a night and day difference on what's water popping and what's not. So we'll just apply a little bit of water to this rag. Doesn't need to be soaking wet, but just kind of looking for that color change. Again, we're just kind of trying to get those fibers wet. This also works for picking up dust, so you can kind of do 2 steps in one. So we're going to get these fibers wet. We'll just wipe it down with a little bit of water, and you see that color change there. That's the wood fibers soaking up the water. And you can see in these further areas that it's already starting to dry. And we're going to use an oil-based product, so we're going to let this dry fully before we continue on, and we'll go from there. But that's how that first section is prepared. You can already see it starting to dry in some of these areas. So it's been about 15-20 minutes, and the water is pretty much dry. And what's amazing is you can even see the difference where we applied that water and where we did not. So everything's sanded the same for their respective rows, but you can see that slight difference in color there, and everything on the top of the screen is the water popped side, and everything on the bottom of the screen is the non-water popped side. As you can tell here, I have some writing. We'll do a pre-stain conditioner. We're going to look at final sanding at 80 grit, final sanding at 120 grit, and final sanding at 220 grit. We'll look at how that sanding affects the way that the wood accepts the color, as well as using the pre-stain conditioner ahead of time. And we're going to go ahead and apply our TrueTone buff-in color infused tung oil. The color I'm using today is TB7004, which is ash, and we'll go ahead and apply that and see how these different preparation steps allow that color to be accepted differently. Welcome back. We're back working on our white oak IKEA countertop. We're talking about stains in this project. You can see this far spot looks a little darker. Maybe I can tell with the walnut floor behind me, but this has our pre-stain conditioner on. I used old Master stain controller. You brush it on, wipe off the excess after about 10-15 minutes of it soaking in, and then you want to apply within 2 hours. Other stain conditioners probably work pretty similar, but definitely read instructions on the back of your particular product. Most of them work by just filling kind of the bigger voids and making a little bit more uniform void. Therefore, your wood accepts the color a little bit more evenly. You're not going to see much difference on something like oak or harder woods, but a lot of softer woods, fir, pine, or even some hardwoods like maple may benefit from a little bit of pre-stain conditioner to help get it a little bit more even. One important tip is when you see the word conditioner, make sure it's a pre-stain conditioner. There are other products called butcher block conditioners, which are usually oil and wax blends, which is really a different product entirely. And you want to avoid those if you're going to use any Waterlox products due to that wax that's in them. So we have the rest of our surface prepped. We are getting our water popping on this portion. We've wiped everything. Everything is clean, and we're ready to go. So again, I have a gloved hand. Our buff puff, I've actually cut one in half. We're doing a smaller project, so I can use one for wiping on, one for buffing off, or a clean rag for wiping off the excess. First things first, we'll start with our TrueTone Color Infused Tung Oil. There's an example of that there. Again, we're using the ash color. It's kind of the medium gray. We'll use it to demonstrate a few other things as well. But one important thing to notice is how our different preparations affect the way that it pulls up the color. So I just have a little bit less than 2 ounces here. Extra sample left over. We're going to shake it very well, make sure it's very well stirred. And this is going to be plenty for a project. We'll probably need about half of this. So, pop the cap off, and we'll just pour a little puddle. And we take our buffing sponge and we just start rubbing it. So your first puddle, again, if you watched our Universal Tung Oil Sealer video, you'll notice that the applicator is going to get soaked with the stain, and that's where a lot of your initial product is going to be. So we just need to keep refreshing that puddle. A little bit more will go a much longer way as your applicator, your rag, your sponge, your pad continues to get filled up with color. So usually I like to work from an area where I've already got color. That helps prevent any puddles or blotchiness, or even if you let that puddle sit too long. So just kind of wipe it on, pick up some more color, on to the next one. And as you can see, the more I use this applicator, the further that color seems to travel. So the color is pretty easy to see if you miss a spot, just a different color. But always work back and work into your wet areas and pick up extra finish to continue on. If you get down nice and low, those wetter areas will look shiny and they're easier to see. Again, we can reload up our applicator, make sure we get our edges well. And we'll do all these sections, and we'll use this in a later video to demonstrate some other examples. So just like our sealer, our clear sealer, we're going to buff this in to all of our wood. We're going to let it sit about 5-10 minutes while it really soaks into that wood. We are putting a little bit of pressure on here. It's not, you don't need a big floor buffer to create a whole bunch of heat. You don't need a car buffer. You don't need to really go crazy with it, but you do need a little bit more elbow grease than a traditional wipe on, wipe off type stain. So this one we do want to help that stain drive that tung oil, drive that color down into the wood. Again, we're just wiping it out with a little bit of pressure, and then we'll let that kind of soak in for a few minutes, and we're going to wipe off the excess. You don't want to wipe it off too soon, and there's really no maximum time. It's not going to set up on you. It's not going to get too hard too quickly. You really have quite a few hours to come back and wipe off any excess, but I would say you're not really going to see much difference in color beyond 15 minutes of letting it soak. And usually the longer you soak, you might be able to get a fractional more color, but you're really not going to see much of a difference there. So again, with the color, it's pretty easy to tell whether you got everything or not. But I'll just do a quick wipe just to get as much excess off as possible. Otherwise, it's just kind of wasted product. So again, dispose of your applicators properly. Let them dry before throwing them in your regular garbage. They should dry overnight. You can put them outside, you can put them in the basement, put them in the garage, and just kind of let them dry before you throw them away, so you're not sealing in your fumes and your solvents in your oils. This is very low VOC, so there's very little odor associated with it. It is good to have some ventilation. You don't want to do it in a completely closed room without proper respirators, but it's not going to overpower you like other heavy solvent, high VOC type stains. So this is immediately after applying our stain. We'll get down nice and low. You'll see some shiny areas. You'll see some kind of almost puddles, if you will. That's okay. We're going to come back and wipe off that excess. Again, you can still see it looks kind of shiny, but you see very nice, even distribution. There's a good swirl right there, but that's okay. We'll wipe that right off. If you can tell, it's a little hard to see with the camera, but there's our water pop line. You can see kind of the big difference within one board there. The top half of the screen is the water pop side, the bottom half is non-water popped, and we'll notice that even more so once we pull off the excess finish. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. We're starting to see a little areas that are showing up a little dry, but we still have some sitting on the surface. So this is where we're going to come back with our clean rag or the other half of our pad if we saved it, and we're just going to wipe off the excess. Typically I'm taking a little extra care so we don't get much color on this tape, but basically you just simply wipe it off. That's all there is to it. That swirl mark that was there before, it's completely gone. So we kind of do an initial wipe to get rid of the majority of the excess. Put this tape nice and clean. And you can see we pulled a fair amount of color off. Flip the rag over. Then we'll come back and do a little bit more of a buff. Just again to get rid of any residual material. I'm not sure if you can tell in that video, but you can see where that water pop line is a little bit more distinctly now that we've wiped off that excess. And you can also see a slight difference in how much color was accepted by the wood with our different grits. The pre-stain conditioner showing slightly less color, just because again we've somewhat sealed that wood, so you see more of the brown tones of the oak show through. Our 80 grit is looking much more gray, especially in the soft grain. It's showing that the wood was more open because we sanded to a lower grit, therefore it's accepting a little bit more color. Our regular 120, the water pop versus non, you can see a bigger difference there. And then the 220, you see not a huge difference between the 120 and the 220, but there's definitely less color in that 220. From here, we got all of our excess off. Again, get down low, look for any spots that you may have missed. Certain ways and constructions of these countertops, you may have some slight gaps. Be cognizant of all the gaps and creases between boards. That's usually where you might see some bleed back. So come back within 15, 20, 30 minutes or walk by in an hour. If you see any of those, wipe those off with a clean rag again. Again, we're still pulling off a little bit of color. That's okay. We're going to let that dry overnight. Best is at this point, it's pretty much dry to the touch. You're not going to pull much off on your glove unless you really go to town on it, but you don't want to walk on it. You want to walk on it in socks. Obviously, you'll pull some color off. But at this point, you're not going to trap any dust, any fibers, any airborne debris. So we can get the air moving over this pretty much right away, and all that airflow and oxygen is going to help this cure even faster and better. So again, this is right after we have finished wiping off the excess TrueTone Buff-In Color Infused Tung Oil. You see that swirl mark is gone. And you can kind of see slight differences here between, we got 220, 120, 80 is definitely darker, and then the pre-stain conditioner is going to be our least amount of color that was accepted. Of note is you can clearly see that line where we did the water popping, even on the pre-stain conditioner. So we water popped and then did the pre-stain conditioner. Here we just kind of water popped again. You see that clear, definitive line where it's accepting more color. It's pretty obvious on the 120 and the 220 as well. Again, a little bit of water reopens that wood grain, helps it accept more color. Again, it's pretty much dry. You can pull that tape. And because it's high solids, it tends not to float around too much. You can usually get pretty clean lines. You do still have some oil in there, so it can creep a little bit. So if you're worried about getting very clean lines, it's a little harder to do on open grain species like oak. You can see it kind of creep a little bit more in some of those open grain areas. But this should give us a good view. And again, this has been, we're pulling this tape within 15 minutes of application. So again, it's pretty much dry, ready to go. Not really pulling any off our fingers. If I really rubbed it, I could pull some off, but you're pretty much ready to go. Let that dry overnight. Again, you can kind of see as we scroll, the pre-stain conditioner is nice and light. The 80 grit's going to accept more color. 120 is typically kind of your standard place to start and stop. You can see it's much browner where we didn't water pop because you have less accepting in that more dense grain. And then our 220 and 120 are relatively similar, but you're getting a little less color in that 220. In general, that concludes our TrueTone stain video. You can see how you can get some different results, but the application is the same either way. Form a little funnel, rub it in, let it soak, wipe off the excess. We're going to be finishing over the top of this with some of our different finish options. We'll do our original products, our H2O locks, will be basically about the same thing. We can also do our urethane and then our TrueTone buff-in tongue oil finish to go over top, and we'll look at how those are applied and how they may affect your final color a little bit more so. That's the reason why we selected the gray. So we'll be back with a follow-up video to look at the finishes over this stain application.